Hello and welcome to episode 208 of the Filmmakers Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk filmmaking, from indie film to studio films and everything in between. How to get them made, how to make them, and how to try not to F it up, in our very, very humble opinion. Today I am absolutely delighted to welcome onto the show the absolutely fantastic Matthew Modine. Now, if you don't know who he is, you're kind of crazy. And most of you do because you clicked on the link. It's got Matthew Modine in the title. We have Matthew Modine as our guest. Now, if you don't know, or you do know, and I'll give you a little refresher, he has acted in the films, starred in these films: Full Metal Jacket, Birdy, Vision Quest, Shortcuts, Memphis Belle, Dark Knight Rises, Alter, 47 Meters Down. He starred on TV shows Weeds, Stranger Things. He's directed the movies If, Dog, Rabbit, and I Think I Thought. He's also worked with these amazing directors like Robert Altman, Alan Parker, Stanley Kubrick, Jonathan Demme, Albert Ferrara, Christopher Nolan. He's been in over 100 films, and he turned down Top Gun. We sit and chat with him all about so many topics: acting work, working with directors. He really dives deep, but mainly we talk about his brand new film, Wrong Turn. It is the reboot of the Wrong Turn film, and it is fantastic. It's really cool. You like those horror films, you're going to love Wrong Turn. It's a really great reboot. It's out now, and it's through the fantastic guys from Signature Entertainment. It's written and directed by Mike P. Nelson. So check out Wrong Turn. Go find it now. Links are in the show notes, by the way. As always on this podcast, links are always to anything we talk about, usually in the show notes. If not, go to our Twitter at FilmmakersPod and ask, and we'll send you it. On the episode with Matthew Modine, we talk about the importance of working in all areas of film, how that can make you a better filmmaker, how being on set is a bit like a magnifying glass. We also talk about working with these big directors he's worked with. We talk a little bit about Stranger Things and his Hollywood career, and also he gives you some amazing advice for actors and working with actors. Yes, I'm so happy Matthew's come on. This is just a delight. Myself and Lucinda Rhodes-Thakrar, my co-host for the day, sit and had a brilliant chat with him. Lucinda, she's the producer of the feature films Robin Hood Rebellion, Repeat, When the Screaming Starts, Arthur and Millie, Knights of Camelot, Behind the Line, and the recently finished Confession, which stars Cole Meany and Stephen Moyer, and will be out very soon. But actually, Lucinda on Monday is about to start principal photography on 2 feature films simultaneously: Glutton, or just a really productive producer. You decide, but either way, it's pretty cool. I am Giles Alderson. If you don't know, I'm a writer, director, producer. I have directed and co-written the feature film The Dare, and also World of Darkness documentary, and Arthur and Millie, Knights of Camelot, which Lucinda produced. I also produced A Serial Killer's Guide to Life, which I think all those movies now are on Sky TV in the UK and on various platforms all around the world as well. So if you fancy checking them out and supporting, then do. Really appreciate that if you do, and do let us know what you think. I always quite like that. So as you know, most of you who've listened to this podcast over this time, we do a newsletter every month where we talk about the guests we've had on. But what we thought we'd do is do a new newsletter where we talk about what's happening in the industry. A kind of curated newsletter. So we'll be talking, so articles on there will be about COVID, about the new rules. There'll also be articles on there about the latest Hollywood releases, or the latest indie films, or potentially where money could come from, or the latest cameras. So we thought we'd curate this and put this out every week and see what you guys think. If you like it, we'll carry on doing it. So check out your inboxes if we have your email. It's called The Wrap Up. Filmmakers Podcast presents The Wrap Up. And if you like it, let us know what you want more of. We'll also be shouting out some indie films in there as well. So if you want yours shouted out, if you want your poster on there, let us know and we'll do that for you. So look out for that. And if we haven't got your email and you'd like to get that every week, then get in touch. thefilmmakerspodcast@gmail.com. Also, every Thursday now, we're doing Clubhouse. If you don't know what Clubhouse is, it is the new social media app, which you can only be on if you're invited, and you can only use if you have iPhone. So it's a very special sort of club. But we did one on Thursday, our first one, our Filmmakers Podcast Presents Making Movies, and it went really well. So we thought we'd do some more. So if you've got iPhone, if you on Clubhouse, if you're not, try and get an invite. You might be able to get one from me if you ask nicely, and come and ask some questions, because that's basically what the platform is. We're there, or myself and a load of our co-hosts sit and chat and you can just get on your phone and ask questions. Obviously, we invite you up there, but still, you can ask any questions about filmmaking. So you fancy that? It's every Thursday, 6:30 GMT time. Link to all those things, like I say, are in the show notes. Next week's guest, we have the fantastic Jill Gevargizian. She is the director and screenwriter of The Stylist, which is a really cool horror movie. Also, guests coming up, we have Jess Hines. She is the actress from Space. You'll know her best from that, but she has written, produced and directed a movie called The Fight. Myself and Ian Sharp have a brilliant chat with her. Also coming up is Christopher Smith. Now, Christopher Smith you'll probably know from films like Creep or Severance or Triangle. Well, there's a new film coming out called The Banishing, and we sit down and talk with him. That episode's coming up soon, as well as this Friday we're going to have a special episode with the director Josh Smith. Now, Josh directed and wrote and produced a really cool little indie film. It's a Western music-based feature film called Buckshot, and we sit down and have a good chat about that. That's going to be this Friday. What a bumper week for you. Matthew Modine now, Joshua Smith Friday, the wrap-up in the week, plus Clubhouse. Oh, we do spoil you. So do get in touch with us if you like on our Twitter @FilmmakersPod, or get in touch, thefilmmakerspodcast@gmail.com. Right, let's get to today's episode with myself, Lucinda, and the fantastic Matthew Modine. Enjoy. Hey!
Good morning. I'm sorry. I'm in a compromised position, so you have to look at a picture of me and being arrested.
Oh, amazing! And is that an official arrested picture? No, it's from a film, surely.
Yes.
Because that's not a compromising position, being arrested at all, Matthew.
Yeah. This compromising position, are you allowed to talk about what that is? Is that, are you getting made up at the moment in a makeup chair? What's happening?
That's what's happening. And if I told you, they'd pull my fingernails out.
Oh, really? Oh, it's that compromising. Hence why I see, you're on a secret show.
You're getting exclusive. Yeah. In a makeup chair, the hair department is laughing at you guys right now because you don't get to know what's going on.
Which is a real shame, but the hair department are, and hello to the hair department over there. Whereabouts are you? You're in America still at the moment, or you're in the UK? Whereabouts are you?
I'm in one of the 50 states.
This is Matthew. We've got to have some info. You're killing us here.
That's it. I mean, that one in 50 states.
Yeah, you've got to guess which one it is.
I could be in Hawaii, or, as the former president who didn't know that Puerto Rico was part of the United States, I could actually be in Puerto Rico. Yeah.
You could be anywhere, and I love that. Thank you for joining us from the makeup chair in one of the 50 states in America where you are right now. Thank you so much. It's honestly really cool to have you on the podcast. Really, really appreciate your time.
Massive fans.
Massive fans, yeah, absolutely. And we're going to talk about Wrong Turn. It's a really cool film that is coming out on the 26th of February, which is really exciting. But we're also going to dive into your career as well and talk all about you and help filmmakers and actors and writers, because that's what this podcast does. We help people from our guests who have been on talk about how they can help other filmmakers and listeners get their films made, or get into the acting world, or work with directors, etc., etc. So just to give you a bit of background,
I'll do my best.
Do your best, because you've only worked with some absolutely massive talent over your time. I'll list them off: Robert Altman, Alan Parker, Stanley Kubrick, Alan Pakula, Jonathan Demme, Abel Ferrara, Christopher Nolan. Do you know what I mean? That's just a few.
I'm like a whore of directors, if that makes sense. Something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
It does. Yeah, that's great.
I hope that's nothing wrong with wanting to work with really talented filmmakers.
I think it's it's really unfair. It's unfair. It shouldn't be.
Do you know what also is amazing? Not just as an actor, you've dipped into every discipline of the filmmaking process, which is absolutely amazing. From the camera department to the casting, production design, you've done everything. Which is awesome, because Giles and I really champion that for our listeners as well, to try everything so they understand the whole process. So that's something that has amazed Giles and I.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's important to know, as I said, in the hair and makeup department, how important their job is, how many hours they put in, the difficulties that they face, the preparation that they go through, the thoughtfulness that they go through, and helping to create the look of a character. We always give credit to costume dramas. We put more attention on those things because they're usually more wig intensive or makeup intensive in the costume departments. But each film, doesn't matter if it's a futuristic film or a contemporary film, there's a tremendous amount of thought that goes into the mental state of the character that the makeup and hair department and costume department are trying to create, and they do things like subtle things. I played Charlie in the movie Flowers for Algernon, and we were trying to think of, because he goes from mentally handicapped, and then he has an operation and he becomes a genius. So we thought, how can we physically show that? And so in the early stages, when he was mentally handicapped, we made all of Charlie's clothes really big and ill-fitting. And as he got smarter, the same costumes, the same shirts, the same pants, we just started to make them a little bit smaller so they fit him a little bit better. But it was the same shirt, the same pants, the same type of material and same patterns, but suddenly he looked more put together. And it's a subtle thing, but you wouldn't notice it really watching the film. But you notice that he becomes more comfortable in his human flesh in a way through the costume department.
You're so right. I think it's absolutely vital, and filmmakers often miss this point when they're doing an independent film or they're just going out and making it with their mates, which I totally endorse, is the color palette of a film, the costume pattern. It's so important that all that gels together. It's not a coincidence that La La Land has all those color palettes. It's no coincidence that Kubrick has a certain color in his films. It's all part of the filmmaking setup. And I suppose Lucinda's question or saying about how the fact you worked in all those departments must have really opened your eyes as an actor to realize, oh, that goes into that. Okay, this is that. That must have been, it made you, I suppose, a better actor because of it.
Well, it's just important to really early on, I realized that everybody that's on the set, has an important job. In order, did you ever play with a magnifying glass when you were little, and you bring it to focus with the sunlight, and you can make a beam that's able to start a fire? So when you arrive, the lens is kind of very high up, and as you get closer and closer to the point where you're walking on the set, you're trying to create a beam that can start a fire, so that when they say action and cut, there's a moment where you've made something that's really brilliant and hot and cool, and as they say, capturing lightning in a jar. But that's everybody that's involved in the process of making the film. The grips and electric, everybody's bringing that focus together. And so if you can understand that and appreciate that as a young actor, that all of those people are your scene partners, they stop being a distraction. I don't know the circumstances. I think that a lot of us heard Christian Bale getting angry at the lighting department or the director of photography on that set, and kind of started screaming. I'm sure it was late at night and he was really focusing. It sounded like in a very emotional scene. So this is not to speak disparagingly of Christian Bale at all. He's an amazing actor. But if he would have understood that all that director of photography was doing was trying to make him look good, maybe he was using a bounce board to try to get some sparkle into his eyes, because it was dark, it was late at night. I don't know. But if you always remember that the boom man, the sound guy that's holding a microphone above your head or putting the microphone on your body, the makeup artist that comes in to, powder your nose just before the scene because it's too much shine, or the hair department who's making sure that things match for continuity, all those people are your scene partners, and all they're trying to do is make the best possible film, the best possible scene as possible.
It's about having respect for every department as well, and knowing that to give them space to do their job, because you're
exactly
right. It's a collaboration, and it's so lovely to hear you say that, because people do forget and they say, oh, it's my film or whatever, but it's the word our should be used more.
I think they should not even be allowed to say a film by, and a film by blah blah. because that's just an insult to the 300, 400 people who helped to make the film happen. That individual didn't make the film all by themselves. And you can take a possessive credit like Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket, but he's saying it's his, but he's not saying that he did everything on his own. And he'd be the first person to give credit to all of those people that worked on the film. And Steven Spielberg doesn't take that credit. Christopher Nolan doesn't. Any of those directors that you mentioned that I worked with, none of them take that kind of possessive film credit. I'm not possessive, but a film by credit.
See, yeah, that's really interesting. I've not thought of it totally that way, and I actually really appreciate that. I think that's totally makes sense. Of course it does. Your passion and love for film, did it start back because your dad owned a drive-in cinema? Is that right? Back in the day?
He didn't own it. He was a drive-in theater manager.
You could have got away with that, Matthew. You could have got away with that then. We would have believed it.
Yeah. That would have put me in a different, my childhood in a different financial income bracket. No, he was just a manager. And
right.
There's seven kids in my family. And,
wow.
The drive-in company that he worked for, it was called Sero, SERO Amusement Company. Later on, it changed the name to Dianza. But they provided us with a home, and my father, in the daytime, he was fixing the speakers and the speaker poles and cleaning up the snack bar, and in the nighttime he was making sure that everybody was having a good time watching the movies.
That's amazing. And was that where your love of film came from? Is that where you thought, because were you there a lot watching movies? Was it like opening your eyes to movies you might not have seen normally?
Absolutely. And it was seeing people like Sean Connery in Darby O'Gill and The Little People, where he's singing and dancing, and then you see him in the James Bond movies, and then you see him in The Man Who Would Be King. And you realize that this guy wasn't just a person that was James Bond, but he was multifaceted. And, Sean Connery never got the kind of credit I believe that he deserved for his acting chops, but he was a wonderful actor. And I had the pleasure of meeting him a couple times, and he was just a gentleman. He was such a nice man, and he loved that my father had been a drive-in theater manager. And I told him what I just told you about seeing him in all the different movies and appreciating his acting abilities. But it was the making of, it was a documentary film that I saw about the making of Oliver with Mark Lester.
Yes. Yeah.
And when you're little and you see people in films, you think it's real. And then when I saw the documentary with the children learning the songs and learning the dance moves, and that it was a profession, that this was something that you could do as a living. I was, I think, 10 or 11 years old, and I started taking tap dancing lessons in Orem, Utah, OREM, Utah. And then, of course, I moved to New York City when I was 18 and studied with Stella Adler at the Stella Adler Conservatory of Acting. And she was part of the group theater. Yeah,
which is brilliant. Was there any other people who are still in the acting business who you went to Stella Adler school with? Because obviously it's a very well-known, famous acting school. So many, brilliant actors such as yourself come from there. Were there a few others who are now still doing it in the biz?
Yeah, I mean, De Niro was there, I think probably 15 years before I had started. And he was already on his way to becoming a legend when I was in school. Who else was there? Melanie Griffith had gone there for a little while. Judd Nelson was there just before I was, from Breakfast Club. That kid, Judd Nelson, he was the bad boy, that's kind of it. That the people that I have met over the course of my career. I worked with Melanie, and I live in New York City, and Robert De Niro is such an important monolith in New York City. He's Robert De Niro. He's Bobby D.
Bobby D,
Bobby
baby.
D.
And that's fascinating because you talked about New York there and the theatre world, because you did a lot of theatre and you still do and still have. And interestingly, a lot of your first few credits in terms of your film world were based on plays. They came from that. Streamers was one of your first feature films. Baby It's You before that, and Private School. Was that something that you always wanted to do? Was film, like you say, you watched Sean Connery on the silver screen, or was theatre sort of your driving force at first?
Well, that's what I'd done in school was plays, and then I went to junior college in San Diego, and I didn't like the theater department because it felt like I was still in high school. People didn't really take it seriously, and everybody that I'd ever met from the East Coast, having grown up on the west side of the United States in Utah, I was born in California, went to high school in Imperial Beach down by Tijuana, Mexico. Everybody I ever met from the East Coast, they just seemed to be a lot smarter, that they had a greater understanding of the world, of world politics, of geopolitics, and just culturally, they were more interesting than the people that I'd met in the West. And it's just something I felt if I went to Los Angeles to start an acting career, I would have just been a dime a dozen, just another blonde-haired kid, surfer, and it wouldn't have taken me seriously, and maybe I wouldn't have taken the profession as seriously had I gone to Los Angeles. So I moved to New York, and it was much more difficult. And once I got there, I realized I wanted to go into a profession that I didn't know anything about. Of course, I didn't know about Stella Adler and her school. And it was, I got a job working in a restaurant where I worked my way up to being the chef at the restaurant. It was a Nouvelle French cuisine restaurant. And I'd listen to the waiters talking about Ibsen and Chekhov and Tennessee Williams and Eugene O'Neill, Arthur Miller. And I realized that I wanted to go into a profession that I didn't know anything about. And I asked one of the waiters, where could I learn about those writers? And he said, you should go to Stella Adler. And I went to see her, and I waited for my interview, and I finally got in the room, and she turned around and looked at me, and she said, if you've come here for me to teach you how to be a movie star, you should turn around and leave right now. I don't teach that. If I'm lucky, I'll teach you to be a human being. Now, that had tremendous importance to me, because when we were living in Utah, one of the films that transformed my consciousness and changed my life was a movie called Little Big Man, directed by Irving Penn. I think it's Irving Penn that directed it, Little Big Man. It starred Dustin Hoffman and the Native Americans. So I was going to school with a lot of Navajo from the reservations, and indigenous people, the Native Americans, called themselves human beings. Chief Dan George, who was nominated for an Academy Award, I believe, for his performance, he was a real Indian chief, and he said they called themselves human beings. So and it was the first time that they pivoted the camera from white settlers being attacked by savage Indians to Native Americans being attacked by savage American cavalry, killing them, killing their ponies, killing their dogs, killing the children. And it was horrifying to see the world from a perspective that I had never seen before. The Indians were always the bad guys. And now suddenly Arthur Penn turned that world upside down, and we saw the world from their point of view, from their perspective. And I was so ashamed of what I witnessed, of what the white people had done to the indigenous people, that all I wanted to be was a human being. So when I walked into Stella's class and she said, if I'm lucky, I'll teach you to be a human being, I started crying, because I finally found somebody that was going to help me to become a human being, and in her sense, a much better human being.
That's incredible. Wow. So how was it then when you, like you say, you'd gone from that sort of theatre world, if you like, and trying to become a better human being through Stella, and suddenly you're now on set of Streamers. You're working with Robert Altman, and not long after that, you're doing Birdy with Alan Parker. How did it feel for you to suddenly be, right there in this world, this amazing world that you'd always looked at through the silver screen, to suddenly you're starring in them?
It's weird. I got to tell you, I think the weirdest experience I ever had, I hosted Saturday Night Live, and I don't know if they broadcast Saturday Night Live in the UK, but imagine, one of the chat shows like Graham Norton, right?
Yes.
Let's say you were a young boy or young girl, and you've watched hundreds of episodes of Graham Norton, and you've seen those celebrities come from backstage and walk out and sit on Graham's couch. So now suddenly you're the person who's walking through that curtain and going out and sitting on the couch. It's an absolutely surreal and bizarre, I don't know how to put it into words. It's just weird when you walk into something that you've fantasized about or dreamed about or hope that you'd have the opportunity to do. It's a really, there's a great line in Albert Brooks, William Hurt. Yeah. Broadcast News.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The movie's called Broadcast News. And William Hurt says to Albert Brooks, "What do you do when reality exceeds your dreams?" And Albert Brooks looks at him and says, "You keep your mouth shut." Yeah. So
that's true. And I suppose that's been your career since then. I mean, what have you learned? It'd be really interesting to know what you learned from those directors. And obviously you've worked with so many amazing directors, but in terms of an overall picture, so obviously each director wants you potentially to bring something different, especially Kubrick. I imagine that was ridiculously different to potentially Nolan. What have you learned in terms of approaching a new director as an actor?
One thing I will say that all of those directors have in common, and I've also heard it from directors that I haven't had the pleasure of working with, like Steven Spielberg or, etc., that the most important thing is casting, casting the right actors. And I would extend that again back to the beginning of our conversation, casting the right crew, that it's very important that as a film director, you have a vision of what the film is. And now you're going to hire these other artists who may share some of the aspects of your vision, but they're also artists. So the reason that you're hiring those people in those departments is to bring their artistry and to imagine things that, or to present ideas that you maybe hadn't thought of. Maybe the art director is going to come in and say, I'd really like the walls to be pink, and I'd like to speak to the costume department and make the costumes green against that pink because of what it's going to say. There was really wonderfully, it was so stunningly art directed. The movie with Joaquin Phoenix, where he was in love with his Siri kind of character on his phone.
Was it called Me or Us or Her? It was called Her.
Yes. Go back and look at that film, the art direction, the costumes, the hair, every department working together in sync to create such a stunningly beautiful film. So anyway, to go back to what you learned from those directors, as I say, they all say that the most important thing is casting, finding the right person to interpret that role. But one of the things that Stella Adler said to me when I was studying with her was that if you wait for a director to tell you what to do, you've lost. That your job, a director is kind of like a conductor, right? The conductor stands in front of all those musicians and is directing them like a film director. But the responsibility of everybody in every department is to go and learn your part. So if you're playing the violin, it's not the conductor or the director's job to tell you how to practice and learn those notes and interpret the music. That's why they picked you to be the lead violinist or the lead cellist or the percussionist. It's your job to learn and interpret the music, how hard you're going to hit that drum. And then the conductor, he stands in front of the crew, or the director stands in front, and he goes a little bit softer, a little bit harder, a little bit faster, a little bit slower, stop now, calm down, and but it's your job, it's your responsibility to do all of the homework, so that when you can come in, you can take those subtle directions. So one of the favorite directions I ever received from Stanley Kubrick was act scared. Now, you might laugh at that and say, well, that's like, come on, act scared. But it's so specific, it's so simple that, of course, I'm going to act a different scared than Arliss Howard, who played Cowboy, or Adam Baldwin, who played Animal Mother, or Vincent D'Onofrio, who played Gomer Pyle. Everybody has their own lens of life of how they're going to act scared, and each of them are going to be a little bit different. And so it doesn't require a great conversation if you've done your homework and you've come in and you're prepared to play the role. A direction like act scared is actually really specific and perfect. I don't want the director to sit down and start talking to me about the psychological background of the character, and that's my responsibility as a person who's portraying that role. So, as I say, going back, it was a long explanation for a simple statement, is that if you wait for a director to tell you what to do, you're lost. You have to come in and then take those kind of subtle directions from the director.
So talking about directors, you've directed yourself and you've produced, and as we mentioned before, you've done, everything, all the disciplines across the whole board. What is your favorite, if you have one? I bet you just love it all. By the way you speak about filmmaking, it sounds like you're totally absorbed and you love every process of it, similar to Giles and I, actually. But do you have a favorite department that you've dipped your foot in several times?
Craft service.
Dip your mouth in those. That's different.
Acting is the best job in the world. Directing is amazing because you get to take all of the things that you've learned over the course of your career and share that. I teach classes, and it's I don't charge any money. Because I think it's really important to share the things that you've learned over the course of your career and help young performers to be able to avoid the potholes in the road, the things to avoid. And because it's a tricky, and it can be a very mean profession, and so you want to be able to share the things you've learned, and I think you have a responsibility as an artist to share things
and help nurture people as well, isn't it?
Yeah. But being a director, in directing the way that I mentioned to you, as a conductor, it's wonderful to have the helm and be able to tell a story. It's very rewarding.
No, it totally is. I totally agree with you about giving back. That's why we do this. It's about giving back to those who, when I started out, I didn't have anything like this, and I'd have loved it. So hopefully people do love it as much as I would have. I think that's really interesting about the directing. I mean, I know you've got a couple of projects that are in pre-production or whatever that you might be directing. Is that something you're looking at to do next? Is that something that you want to do again?
Yes. The COVID is messed up my whole schedule. I was supposed to do a Broadway show last autumn, and obviously got shut down. And this show that I'm doing now, I don't know, if we get hit by COVID, we could get shut down for a week. So at this stage, you just kind of got to do everything day by day.
I think it'd be really interesting to talk about Stranger Things a little bit because it blew up so big. How was it for you to be asked to come on a show like that? Especially for me, I was like, oh, that's amazing. Matthew Modine's in this. This is really cool. What was it like for you then to come on a show that was fresh, that was new, full of kids and exciting and blew up as big as it did?
Well, I didn't want to do it, and I think I turned it down at least 2 times, maybe 3 times. And then I finally spoke to Matt and Ross Duffer. I was in the UK. I was in London doing a show, a movie, and they came on. They were so complimentary, and because they didn't have the script, so I didn't know what I was saying yes to. It was just that I think that the character didn't get introduced until like the final couple pages of the script, and I've done a show before where they didn't have the script, and I got my fingers burned. I got that it what was promised was not delivered, so I didn't want to find myself in a situation where a lot was being promised and less was being delivered. But then when I spoke to them on the phone, and they were so smart and kind and generous, I said yes, and I'm really grateful that I did. I really love those two boys, and I call them boys. They're young men. They're not even young men. They're men. But they were young boys. I feel like young men when I went to work with them, and I'm just so happy for them and the success of the show. Because the thing is, Netflix is in, I believe it's 162 territories. So there's only two left. I think it's North Korea and China.
One day, maybe.
Yeah. So if you take whatever film of mine, the most successful film that I've ever had, it may have played theatrically in 60 territories. So when you have a successful show on a streaming service like Netflix or Hulu or Amazon, all the different platforms that exist now, to have the potential to be in 162 territories, you have access to parts of the world that you never had access to before. And when Stranger Things came out, I was doing a film in Italy, and little kids were coming up to me and saying "Papa," and wow. my children call me Papa. So I thought, that's really weird. Why are little kids that I don't know calling me Papa? And then then finally one of them said Dr. Brenner, and I went, oh wow, I guess Stranger Things is out on television, because I was in Italy and I didn't have access to Netflix, so I wasn't aware of this global phenomenon and the breakout success that the show was. So I'm in a business where you always have to remain part of the conversation and be relevant. And Los Angeles, it's called show business, right? And it's a business, and they don't give a shit about the things that you've done in the past. Your career, your resume, your CV. What they want to know: what are you doing today? What have you got in the pipeline? What's coming up? They don't care about your career. That's different than in the UK, where you can celebrate someone over the course of their career. In Italy and France and other parts of the world, Japan, people, you do something well once, you're celebrated. You do it 2 or 3 times, and it's a different kind of appreciation than you receive in the United States. People, it's like, yeah, I've seen that. What's next?
That's really interesting. The comparison with the way different countries deal with the successes of an actor or somebody, whatever field. Actually, it's really interesting to hear that. I wanted to talk a little bit. Just, I know we're on a time limit, so I know that we wanted to talk about Wrong Turn, which is out on the 26th of February. Where did you shoot the movie? It looks fantastic. It was a great movie. We both really enjoyed it, Giles and I. Where did you shoot it?
In Ohio, just outside of Cincinnati, out in it's remarkably untouched. The wilderness up there, and you don't have to leave the city to more than a half an hour and to run into that kind of emptiness and wildness. It was this late summer, and it was beautiful. The weather was really wonderful. I didn't know the Wrong Turn. I'd heard of it, but when I told my son and my daughter that I'd received this offer to play this role, they both, they love horror genre films. And while this one's not really horror, it's more thriller, because there's not supernatural aspects to it. There's no zombies, and I don't want to let too much out of the bag.
Less gore, I suppose, right? It's much more psychological, thrilling than the horror elements.
But my kids were super happy. They were like, "You got to do it, man! It's so much fun." It's so much fun, those movies. So I did one in the UK up in the Moors with Olivia Williams.
You did, yeah. There's a pretty much all British cast. I was like, wow, he's done that. That's really incredible. Yeah, that must have been fun as well.
It was. Man, the Moors are cold.
Yep, I know.
It's really cold here right now.
But it's a different kind of cold, isn't it? It's a cold that gets in when you get in the tub, it makes the water cold so fast. It's like as if you weren't sitting in a hot tub. You're like an ice cube in a tub.
Yeah, very true. It's amazing. Just as the success of Stranger Things, has that made it easier for you to do films like Wrong Turn? Like you said there, suddenly you're relevant again, as things like that suddenly popping up much more often for you.
It makes it easier. Success breeds success, so it's something Robert Altman said to me, because he always like, hey kid, you're going to be a big star. He used to call me Coop, like because of Gary Cooper. He said I reminded him of Gary Cooper. So you're going to be a big star. I said, don't say that. And it was Stella Adler. I blame her for beating that out, because she had a real loathing of Hollywood and the star system. And so I was always like, don't call me. I don't want to be a star. I just want to be an actor. I want to be a good actor. I don't care about the celebrity. And Robert Altman finally one day said, what is it with you and this star thing? And I told him about Stella Adler, and he said, oh, she's full of shit. He goes, listen, kid, I need you to be a big star, because that's how I get my films financed. And it's true that as big as a star director that Robert Altman was, or Alan Pakula, or Alan Parker, even Stanley Kubrick, that they wanted people that had star caliber, because that's how it helps them to get the financing and ability to make their films. It's as I said, show business.
It's show business. Me and Lucinda know this well. This is something we're talking about coming up against all the time. And interestingly, Wrong Turn is distributed by Signature. And me and Lucinda have a lot of our films have been distributed by Signature as well. And it's really interesting when we're talking about names and that whole world of getting the right name in. And that must be interesting for you, I suppose, sort of being, am I a name? And what kind of world am I in right now, depending on what films just come out? Does that bother you at all? Does that affect how you go about what you're trying to achieve?
It's in the back of your mind that you want to be in things that are successful. But here's the rub. I've never gone to work on a film where everybody doesn't come into the job with great enthusiasm and a desire to make a great movie. All directors are given the same equipment. You have cameras and lenses and soundmen and lighting and all the different art departments. And some people are able to create magic with those tools, and some people don't. It's the same lens, it's the same camera, and some people make something beautiful and amazing, and other people don't. It's kind of like baking. You have flour and yeast and sugar and salt and whatever elements that you're putting into the bread. And some people make it light and fluffy and beautiful, and some people make something that's just unedible. And I have yet to figure out what that magic is. I don't know what it is, but I do know that everybody does the best they can to try to create something beautiful and amazing and fun for an audience. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Isn't that amazing? You mentioned a second ago about nearly turning down Stranger Things, but you also turned down Top Gun, which is, I suppose you don't mind talking about, because I think it's really interesting about your world and what you stood for as well. But is there any other roles that you've turned down, and maybe just touch on the Top Gun story there a bit, that you've gone, oh, maybe I should have done that in the long run?
Well, that's about American education, that as I mentioned, would grown up west of the Mississippi, and I was never told about Russia's participation in the Second World War, that how many millions of Russians had died fighting the Nazis, and had Hitler not made the mistake that Napoleon made of going into that part of the world in the wintertime, that the outcome of the war would have, no question, been quite different. Or how long it would have gone on had Germany not made that mistake. So, what I got taught in school was typical American propaganda, that we were responsible for the victory of the war. We saved England, we saved Italy, we saved France. Like those countries didn't have really anything to do with their own salvation. Maybe the British, because of the British movies that we saw, that they got some credit for kicking Jerry's butt, as you guys would say. But so I got invited to go to the Berlin Film Festival, and they asked if I'd like to go to East Berlin. I said, I can't go to East Berlin. I'm American. That's a communist country. And they said, no, you can go to East Berlin because you are an American. I was like, what? Really? And so I went across Checkpoint Charlie there in East Berlin, or in West Berlin, and entered into, it was like the Wizard of Oz, of going from black and white to color. But I was in colorful Berlin and went into black and white East Berlin, and felt like the streets were still littered with debris from bombing, and buildings were burned out, and there was absolutely no reconstruction that had happened when I was there. And then I met these Russian soldiers at a monument for the millions of Russians who had died fighting the Nazis. There was a big monument, and they spoke English. I didn't speak any Russian, but yet they were able to speak English to me. I smoked cigarettes then. I gave them some American cigarettes, and they gave me pins from their Russian uniforms. And I realized that those guys were no different than my brother who participated in the Vietnam War. They were just kids. That they weren't evil. If I touched their head, and felt around their hair, I wouldn't have found horns. And I was led to believe that, having grown up in Utah and California, that they were just evil, horrible people, and they weren't. So when I came back from East Berlin, and that script was waiting for me, and it was a propaganda movie. It was made during the Ronald Reagan presidency, and all of the Cold War antics of what was going on in the world, the geopolitics, and not the human beings. And I had met the human beings, and I felt sort of like Muhammad Ali when he went to prison for what he believed, when he said that I don't have any fight with the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese haven't done anything to me to harm me, but look what the United States has done to every African American since they started bringing Africans from Africa, and enslaving them. That the fight that Muhammad Ali had with his own country, not with the Vietnamese. The Vietnamese hadn't done anything to harm him.
And that's how you felt, I suppose, with the Top Gun issue. You were like, well, I'm not doing it for that reason. That's your stance on it.
Yeah, it just felt like a propaganda, like a war propaganda movie. And Tom Cruise has talked about it and said that it was a film about individualism and personal strength and overcoming adversity. And I think for Tom, that's probably, that's the case. Not probably, that he said it. That's what it is. But I'm a different person, and it was like trying to squeeze me. I wear a size 13, and I couldn't fit my foot into a size 10 shoe, and I couldn't participate in a lie.
That's amazing. Let's say you've probably turned down lots of other bits and pieces. We could talk to you forever. And I know Marek's going to come and pull you off to go to your next interview in a second. But just finally, I suppose, on Wrong Turn, which we should give it some context for our listeners. It is the story of friends who are hiking in the Appalachian Trail, who are confronted by the Foundation, who are a community of people who have lived in the mountains for hundreds of years. And shit goes down.
You know what we wouldn't have found if we would have stayed on the trail?
What is that?
I saw someone. I saw someone.
It's a story people here know but don't talk about, except in whispers. And
anyone who goes up there. What is this place? Guys! They don't come back.
Descendants of these people are still living up there on the mountain.
So, Matthew, making Wrong Turn, what was it like to dive in? Because now you're working with a new director, new actors, new people. What bit of advice can you give people for going in to something like that, especially on Wrong Turn?
To be prepared, you like I said, if you're playing the violin and this is the song, you got to learn your part. You have to know it backward and forward. And so that, I did, as you say, I didn't know that director. I had never met him. I never met any of those actors. They were new, as I was one time. And so you want to help them, when possible. But Charlotte Vega, she showed up, she came loaded for bear. She was ready to play. And, so we all got along really well because everybody was really prepared and doing the best they can to make a good movie. And it wasn't a hard role for me because I'm a father. I have a daughter and I have a son. And if anything, God forbid, should happen to them or they go missing, you're going to do everything in your power to find them and help them in whatever situation it is that they're in.
Matthew Modine, thank you so much. This has been incredible, honestly. Thank you for your time. You're an amazing man. I am going to go travel around the 50 states and look through every hair and makeup truck until I find you.
There you go. All right.
Brilliant. Good luck with the new shoot. Hope it all goes well. Wrong Turn is out now. Well, it's out on the 26th of February or out now, depending on timing of this. So thank you, Matthew. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening.
Thanks, buddy. Bye. So Wrong Turn is out now. Do go watch it. It's really cool. If you like those Wrong Turn movies, you're going to love this. It's a brilliant reboot. Cast are amazing. Matthew, you're amazing. Really, really cool. Lucinda, where can people follow you?
People can follow me on Twitter at Lucinda Rhodes-Thakrar.
Wow. Yep,
I don't know.
It is. No. You Lucinda Rhodes, and then you can write Lucinda Rhodes-Thakrar, and it will come up. I'll pronounce your name correctly for you if you like. There it is. And then your production company, which is where you do put a lot of postings about when you're looking for an editor or a sound designer or actors. It is at
PicPerf Limited. PICPERF Limited.
You can follow me at Giles Alderson. You can follow the podcast at Filmmakers Pod. We are on Instagram, The Filmmakers Podcast, or you can go to the website www.thefilmmakerspodcast.com, where we have a whole back catalogue of over 200 episodes on making film. And if there's something specific to act, then type in acting, and all those actors, if it's directing, all those directors will come up. So do go do that on our website, filmmakerspodcast.com. Thank you very much for listening. You're all amazing. If you like this, do tell your pals. That's how we grow. And if you really like this, go to iTunes and give us a 5-star review.
Whoop whoop. Give us a 5-star review. Bobby D, baby.
Amazing. I really enjoyed chatting to Matthew. That was amazing. Thank you for listening. Take care. Go out there and make your indie film. You can make it happen. And if you're lucky enough to rise up and do well, as Matthew said, it is your duty to send the elevator back down. Back down. Send it back down. Send it back down. Take care, everyone. See you next Tuesday. Bye.
You've been listening to a podcast of the Podfix Network. Discover more audible gems like this at podfixnetwork.com. Make sure to catch up-to-the-minute network shenanigans by following @Podfix on Twitter, official_Podfix on Instagram, @Podfix Network on Facebook. And make sure to subscribe to Podfix Presents wherever you choose to find podcasts. The Podfix Network, artist owned and loved.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and the rest of you.
What is the perfect package?
Well, it could be anything.
This week we'll be creating the perfect strip mall, the perfect school lunch, wedding guest list, the perfect fast food meal. We will be casting the perfect season of Big Brother using only Muppets.
2 hosts, 5 picks, 1 perfect package. Each episode is full of friendly debates.
Off, dude. Nobody wants that. You're not Mozart.
And very strong opinions.
You know I have no opinions. I just like things.
The Perfect Package Podcast, part of the Podfix Network. Visit p3show.com for more details.